Hello, it's so cool to be here.
It's so fun to be here. You look great with your blonde hair, Sean.
I'm like
Thank
living for the
you.
blonde.
It needs a haircut soon, but we know that that's kind of like going to be a self cut now, so that could be interesting.
Well, I am not going to lie. Last Monday we had Sam, the amazing Sam Villa, on here, and I don't know if you watched it, but he had this haircut where you take the guide here, right, and then you put it to the nose, right there, and then you take horizontal sections. And so I did it, and see the volume I have.
Nice.
Yeah,
Right?
It looks good.
Thank you. I sent him pictures afterwards and said, feel free to show it as, Kathy will do. I was like in my robe, She's like, what is up with her? But, yeah, so yes, self haircut as hairdressers. I'm actually surprised that mine looks as long as it does, because one knows I can have a couple glasses of wine and decide I need a fringe. I can't cut a fringe with my glasses on, but I actually can't see with them off. So couple glasses of wine in, no glasses, seeing glasses, and who knows what it ends up looking like. So there's that. But you are awesome, as you. And I know that you've been thinking really hard about, the back to business in the salon. What are some hot tips, tricks, and things that you can share with the audience that's watching? I know you've been doing a lot on your Instagram page and sharing a lot there. Thank you. You've also done some videos for us in what looks to be a beautiful studio, but it's your and so thank you for that as well. And so I think the audience knows that you're a great hair colorist, right? But maybe they want to know something else about you.
Like what? Where are we going with this?
I don't know. I just thought of it. So let's do a quick rapid fire. So, favorite singer?
Well, that's Mariah Carey. We know that. Come on.
Okay. Favorite food?
Favorite food? Oh, it was one of those just went blank because I've been like trying to cook all the food lately. So I won't lie, it's been kind of basic. We'll say it's Americanized food, that's for sure. But in real life, Mexican food.
Good,
Sherry, I know you can teach me a little bit about that.
I can, for sure. For sure. Let's see. Favorite vacation spot?
Ooh, favorite vacation spot. My go-to spot is always Palm Springs. It's a nice little getaway, and you feel like you're in like a magical little paradise.
Excellent.
I have one. Wait.
Okay.
Favorite movie?
Ooh.
Favorite movie? Ooh, well, okay, the first one that always comes to mind that I was obsessed with at a really young age, which is probably a little bit weird, is Death Becomes Her. Do you guys remember that movie? With like, yeah, I remember watching that as a 6-year-old like over and over and over again. So I don't know. I think that made me gay.
Homework.
Oh my God, it's a classic. It's a classic.
Okay, excellent. And let's see. I don't know. Any worst moment I asked you to do something?
I think you're steering me into the story that you're going to tell. So I'll just start it for you.
Yeah.
So what happened was I happened to be at the exchange, and Sherry got all the new symposium merchandise in that they wanted to like test and figure out what they were going to order. And so she had some t-shirts, and she was trying to decide if the V-neck was too low or not. So she was like, Sean, why don't you try one of these on and let me see? So she gives me the t-shirt. It's like miniature. It's like a women's like small for sure, easily. And so I go in a room and I like pulled it and rolled it on over myself, and I hadn't been going to the gym as much then, so it was definitely a little bit thicker. And I was like, Sherry, I can't show you, like this is ridiculous. But she made me come out in front of everyone with this like rolled on t-shirt with a V-neck that was like split open way too low and too wide because it was just pulling in all directions. And I had to get her to help me roll it off after. So
yeah, true story. I I thank you, Sean. And it's like I said, he, like all of us here, are super passionate about what we do. He knew that I had to make a decision on this unisex V-neck shirt. And I kept thinking, I don't know any man that's going to wear, maybe Alfredo, but to wear the V-neck that low, you know, like for the majority of our consumers, it's not a thing, right?
Right.
So thank you, because you helped me make the decision right then and there.
That it was a no.
And so there was that. But Sean, we won't take up any more of your time, but I do love getting to know you and all of the artists that are on here even more. I didn't know that Mexican food was your favorite. I do know Mariah Carey. And maybe one day on a live, you and I should go live and I can tell my Mariah Carey story because it's a good one. And in the meantime, why don't you tell us, how would you guide and direct those that are watching when they go and finally get the okay that they can open the doors to their salon? What would you say? Here's some hot tips, tricks, and techniques that you can use.
Well, the first thing that really comes to mind is obviously that we're going to be going back to things a bit differently than they were before. So there's going to be a lot of changes. And I think we're still uncertain with what exactly those will be, but I'm sure it's going to be involving, you know, not being able to accommodate the same amount of guests in a day. And also we're going to be dealing with hair that we're not really sure what the situation is going to be, whether they've taken some matters into their own hands and did a self-cut like Sherry, or maybe they've taken like lightning into their hands. We could have a lot of corrections. So for me right now, the focus of what I'm trying to share with stylists is really that it's going to be about like simplifying the services that we can do and kind of how to be able to like let your client know what's achievable in one session and how we can like book accordingly. That we're going to be very busy when we start rolling again, and everyone's going to want to get in, but we're still unsure of how we're going to be able to really accommodate that. So time-saving techniques are really going to be the win, I think.
I think that what you just said is super important, Sean. Well, outside of the fact that we don't know how we're going to be able to open the doors, that could dictate how much time we have with each client. But more importantly, depending on where they are at and where they want to go. Now, on one hand, they go like, listen, we in, you know, depending on where you're at, in New York, we've been on lockdown. I actually have no idea. Maybe 5 weeks. Is that right?
At least, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It could be that somebody, if they had just had their hair done, they're in their normal cycle, right? So they're going to come back with the regular appointment that they had before. If someone, however, was due in that first week, then they're going to have an extended route, etc. And more important, and that's when we have to think to ourselves, you know, like, okay, I'm in this place right now where can you see my regrowth?
Yes.
Okay.
Just barely.
You can see it though. It's like this
Yes.
long. I have like this whole sprout of grays that I didn't know that I had. So there's that, which is a little devastating. But you know, I've been thinking, because I don't know why, but I ordered all these wigs and decided I was going to start wearing them on Saturday nights. And I'm obsessed now with some of the wigs and the looks. And I'm thinking to myself, do I want to, you know, now that I've got, but I've got a little root, should I change my whole look? Is it all the time? And we all know that one appointment getting me to have an extended dark pink length is not going to be in one appointment. So it's almost like treat these, these consultations that we do as a way, to your point, this may take 4 appointments to get you to where you want to go, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good point, is like have the call ahead of time so you can see what's going on, you can discuss where they want to go, and be realistic about how long it's going to take to get there. I love that.
Exactly.
All right, what else would you tell our listeners here today?
Well, I think that what I'm prepared to share is a little bit about how we can do that, how we can get through a whole head really simply by following, like what you said earlier, principles. You know that I'm always about sharing things that are principally based because it works every time. And so it's also simple. It's an easier way for me to remember what I'm doing when I just understand to follow the principles and work methodically that way. It lets you work I know everyone always says this, but smarter, not harder, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I want to share today is how to be able to have a better understanding of the head form and where we're placing we're going to do a foil technique, because I think that's really relevant right now, especially because we don't know how much like regrowth and stuff we're going to be dealing with. Some of the open air techniques will take a little bit more time. So if we can create like a balayage or lived in look still, but doing it with foils so that we know that we're able to get more lift with it. So that's the plan today.
I can't wait. Okay, show us.
All right, so I'm gonna get out of my chair and get started. I have us positioned at the ideal height for mannequin work. So let me move and I'll get going.
Okay, so while Sean's getting himself ready, Alfredo and I did not coordinate, but I think that I've decided that we're dressed the same. I'm just the sparkly version.
You're the sparkly version of me. We kind of did plan last week, but this week we just surprised each other.
Mm-hmm.
I like it.
It looks like it's the same color, right? We're in the same color family.
This is like an olive kind of sweater. Do you see it?
Yeah.
I wore my jewelry today, though, so that's my sparkle. It's my jewelry.
Mm-hmm. Good job.
All right, I'm in. Right. Can you guys see me clear?
Yes.
All right, so this is our benchmark girl that I got situated for us to be able to show the technique of how exactly it's going to look. I'm going to demonstrate it for you on one side, but obviously you'll do the same thing on the other side just to keep it easy on camera purposes. But as I spin here, you can see that we get some great dimension and a lived in look with it. But again, this was done working with foils and flash lift bonder inside, of course, my go-to lightener. To be able to get this result. So I'll get you set up on the sectioning here on a different head so that you'll be able to see the technique. Here is my fresh client. She's ready for some color. So first thing I'm going to do is show you about the sectioning that I talked about. Like I said, it's just principle based. We call it the vertical and horizontal breakdown with Redken. So what you're going to do is go from the high point of the head to just be at the ear. On the mannequin head, when I'm working with a mannequin, I always go a little bit further back because, as I'm sure you guys noticed, there's not as much of a hairline here. Like, there's not as much hair like a human would have. So just to give yourself a bit more space, if you're working with a mannequin, you can go just behind the ear and that will be okay. So once you get the front and back separated, the next thing we're going to do is separate the top from the bottom. Where you're going to find that is on the side of the head, placing your comb flat. And just where it goes to bevel, it would be where you place like a horseshoe parting, for example, and that will give you two sections in the front. So I find I can just clip those out of the way to keep myself organized. Now we're going to go through the other side, and we are going to now continue this line from the top all the way around. Like so. For this one, just dropping everything. This one, we can clip it over to the other side of the head for now, just so you guys can see clearly. And then the next and last section, we're going to find that at where the head goes to round in the back, where her occipital bone would be. You're going to see there'll be a bevel there as well. So we'll take our section, and that's going to separate out our nape from our back. And we're going to begin this technique in the front today. And the reason why I'm going to start it in the front is because she has no lightness currently. So if your guest doesn't have any lightness in their hair currently, I like to start up here because that's what they're going to see, not so much what's happening in the back. So I feel like a lot of the time when we start back here, this stuff gets really nice and blonde. And then by the time we get to the front, either our time is almost up or we're just kind of over that client sometimes. And you rush through the most important area of the head. So if it's darker, I'll start there. If she's already blonde, then I'll start in the back because that'll allow me to rinse it first if I have to. Is everyone's view is okay on the camera?
Yeah, the view of the mannequin's perfect. We don't always see you, so just pop down and say hi to us every now and then.
Hello. All right, so now I'm going to start in the side section here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to place my foils through diagonally. And the reason why I like to do that is because it's going to add us some softness and movement, but also ensure that when she pulls her hair back, there's not going to be any like hard lines. So the reason I bring this up is because I think a lot of the time people go to put a diagonal foil in and they follow the hairline exactly as it is. What tends to happen is as that grows out, then you end up seeing the hard line from where that foil was placed when they wear their hair back. So I like to go through on more of a strong diagonal like this, and it's a very small foil to start out with, but working up that way versus going fully on the front. And I just find it gives us a softer, more lived in look that doesn't look like a big panel around the front. So now on this little tiny piece here, because it's the first place I'm going to put color, I'm just going to do a little baby micro stitch like so, just to have a very soft little highlight through there to introduce the color to the hairline. Now my tip is this: instead of coloring it in natural fall, a lot of the time what we do is we go to place the foil in and start to color and try and do a blend on it. But what you want to think about is this hair is living in natural fall. So if you're trying to create softness on it, you're already setting yourself up to like maybe not win the best. So think about this: when we balayage, we elevate the hair first to create the softness, and then we start to paint on the ends. So we can do the same thing when it comes to foiling the hair. So I can start by elevating it, taking the brush, just like I was balayaging, and just gently gliding it over the surface towards the scalp. So you guys can see that gives it a softness already without me having to be at the foil doing all those little tiny brush strokes. So now I can place the foil in more comfortably and paint all the way down through to the ends. And then just remember, because you did a bit of a blend up there, you don't want to fold your foil all the way up to that spot, because then it will ruin your blend. So I'm going to fold up just below that first, and then the rest of the way. Now, directly after that, I'm going to just leave a space. So we're going to drop out a slice, and then go and take a slice right following that as well. So the reason why I do the slice after is the slice is going to be our like boldest pop of color that we're going to have. So by having more of a subtle foil first, it allows me to have strength and boldness right after it. But when she pulls it back, I'm not going to see the strength of that line. To make it even softer, we can go through and paint on as if we were balayaging. So maybe the highlight will come closer to the front and less in the back. So we talk about points of light. The point of light can be a little bit higher up here and drop down to the back to make sure that you don't have any lines in that color. And then we can take the foil like we normally would and continue down through the ends. The last foil that we're going to place in this section is going to be a weave. And the reason why we're going to do the weave is because we have the strength in the slice that we just created, and now we want to start to lessen off on the intensity of color around the hairline. So I'm going to take a slice and drop it out, and then I'm going to take my next piece that I'm going to weave. And I like to also weave a little bit chunkier towards the front, so you can go a bit finer at the back and then a bolder slice area in the front. Then you'll see what that's going to do is give me a really kind of random highlight look that has that pop of color around the face to less in the back. We can do this in the same way by elevating and then brushing the color on like we're balayaging. You can go as close or far away as you want. What's that, Sherry?
Well, Sean, I saw you last year in Sweden, and you were talking about the elevation and likening it to sort of like some design rules. Do you mind just sharing that? I thought it was so profound.
Yeah, totally. That was, so when you think about cutting hair, if I were to hold this section down and cut it, I'd have a hard line, right? So think about that with coloring as well. If I'm coloring this flat down in this position and trying to get the blend, it's probably going to be a harder line than if, again, in design world, if I picked this hair up and cut it, when it drops, it's going to have more softness. So the same rules apply with design and hair color. It's just our natural habit is so often to just take the foil, place it in, which is in low elevation, and then try and get a blend. But I'm sure you guys have had that happen before where you think you've done the best blend possible, but still sometimes you end up seeing a line in there. So that's the best way for me to equate it, is thinking about when we cut hair, the same things apply to coloring hair.
Yeah.
Yeah. How are you doing? I'm back in the camera.
Really good.
Okay, good. If anyone has any questions too, make sure you just throw them out at me. I can't see them.
No questions right now. Any
Perfect.
questions for Sean as we're going along here?
So do you, I love the way that you incorporate, because I do a lot of hair painting, I love the way you incorporate the balayage before you actually lay the foil down, because for me, somebody that like is trying to get my foil game up more and get into foils, that was super helpful for me, like the visual of pulling out. Do you ever not do that? And if so, why?
You know what? Since I kind of like discovered that could be a good habit, it's turned into my habit for all of my foil placements. So whether it's doing something that is more balayage looking or more of a traditional highlight, it's just turned into my habit now that I automatically go to do that. And it's just the new way that I foil hair. So again, the reason why is because you automatically get that softness. And I think sometimes people rely more on the root shadow after to get the softness, when in reality, if we put it in there first, not only is the root shadow still going to look beautiful on it, but as the root shadow fades off, the hair is going to look more blended already, and we're not relying so much on trying to put that shadow in after. So for me, it just saves me worrying as much about that after.
And also back to the working smarter, not harder, right?
Yeah, totally. Exactly.
Yeah.
Just making things easier. So then another huge thing that a lot of people are telling you guys about now is like how important like depth is in a scenario as well. So in order to see bright, you need to have dark. And I think that's when we get into the habit of like over highlighting or over foiling the hair. So in this section, for example, we've already got a nice pop there for the face frame. I prefer to leave this area out as my depth. What you can do though, is if you feel like it's going to be too much contrast, you can actually take the remaining hair that was left out in between the foils and just tip out the ends. And then you can also do that same thing in this area here. So you could simply go through and balayage the ends, place it in foil if you want to get more lift with it. And that's going to tie this all together. But this shadow area up here is really important to showcase the pop that you get from that face frame. So I think that's something that people forget about, is they over foil and then they end up just everything looks blonde and you're not getting those impact pieces in the look.
So there's 3 foils there, Sean.
There's just 3 foils there. And then, like I said, an optional step would be to go through and lighten this hair that's left out in between. Some people like to like backcomb a little bit and tip out the bottom. And then you could do the same thing here. So if I was going to do that in this section, I'll just show you guys what it would look like. I would always over direct it forward. Reason being, we always want the lightness to be lighter around the face and more depth towards the back. So if you go forward with it and you put your comb in, the further down you place your comb is going to determine how much hair is going to push out of the way. So for example, if I start here and push back, you'll see it's just a small amount of hair that ends up getting pushed out of the way. If I come down further on this section and push back, you can see how much more hair has actually been pushed out of the way. So keep that in mind when you're doing a big section. You really only want to be able to lighten a little bit of the ends. So in this case, that much of a cushion wouldn't be bad for me to get a very subtle effect on the ends. Now, another tip is when it comes to pushing and backcombing is a lot of the time we go crazy and we lock it in like we're doing an updo, but then it's hard to get out. So what I like to do is just take a clip and clip that area where the cushioning is in. So when I pull on it, it's not going to pull out any of that. And I can feel comfortable now to be able to go through and paint those ends.
Nice. Sean, Carmen from South Africa has a question, which is how much time would you book for this client? Color, cut, and blow dry on average.
Wow. Okay. Well, that is, I mean, in terms of color, that really sets us back in timing sometimes depending on what we're starting with. So what I can say is this application, when you become familiar with it, you should be able to cruise through and do the whole head in about 30 to 45 minutes. Mm-hmm. So timing on that. Now, then the other timing comes into your processing. So that, again, is really going to depend on what you're starting with and how much lift you need to achieve with it. But I would say realistically, my goal is always to do techniques that are able to be done in a reasonable salon time, which I think is on average about 3 hours is often the case. Having a full highlight that you have to glaze and then blow dry and cut. So nothing too crazy. I don't like to share huge projects because it's not something that we can always use every day in the salon.
Excellent.
Okay, so I'm going to fast forward to the backside now because I have got some hot tips for this area. I know everyone is really good in the top and has their great placements of how they like to do the top of the head, but I think back here is where sometimes we run out of ideas. And so I'm going to show you some really great ways to speed through that area because there's a lot of hair there to be able to have to color. So let's take a look. I'm going to spin her around. All right, so through this back area here, what you want to think about first is where this hair oftentimes is going to live. So if it's a long-haired girl, we know that the girls are always pulling it over their shoulder so that they can see that from the front. And so the other option would be, if she also has long hair, that it's probably going to be pulled up into a ponytail as well. So why that's important to think about is because, again, where you're placing that foil is going to determine what kind of visual you see. And I think oftentimes what we tend to do is follow either the hairline there on the outside edge, which gives us the same thing that would have happened in the front. It would give us just a big sheet of color. And what I find happens sometimes is, and I'm sure you guys have seen this too, there's a big panel here, but then there's color missing on either side. And it doesn't really look intentional. So what I have started doing, and people often think this is a little bit weird, but I go through and actually put my foils going diagonally forward through the back area here. Reason why you want to think that, and the line is going this way, which when they have their hair flipped open on their shoulders is exactly where they're going to see that color spilling. On the other side of that, when they go to pull it up, if you've placed your lines in this way, you're going to see more like highlighted looking ribbons coming up from the ponytail versus a big sheet of color happening. So it tends to look a bit more natural and looks more realistic and seeing that highlighted effect with it. So what I do down here is also just go through and put in 3 foils. So the first area that I'm going to go in, if you see, here's the section of the nape area that I'm going to work in. I'll go from the top corner to the bottom corner, like so, and place my first one right along that line. Now, when it comes to what type of stitch or weave you want to do in here, I think it's best to just do like a regular type of stitch in this area. So you've got a regular highlight coming through. And then the same thing is going to happen. We're going to elevate it up and just blend that softly towards the root area. Be careful in this area. This is a really hard area to color because the head shape rounds in. So I find, again, working on these diagonals sometimes can be a little bit challenging with how you get the foil in. So by being able to blend it first before placing it in the foil, it really helps to eliminate this point right here where I'm at, where it's that struggle of trying to get the foil to stay close and locked into the head while you're dealing with working on a round shape. The other thing that's really important too is noticing like how saturated the foil is with lightener. I think oftentimes we think that lightener can be forgiving because if we get it on the hair, it's going to lift. But the reality is if you really want to get the full lift from the lightener, the thicker you put it on, the better. And I always equate it to like painting a wall. If you were going to paint a wall in your house, if you do like one really solid coat and take your time to do it evenly, you're going to get a better result than if you do like 3 sloppy coats. So think of lightener like painting. It's the same deal. You want to put it on really nice and thick so that you get the maximum lift out of it. So what I've done now is just left a slice out, putting another diagonal weave in on that corner. Then I'll start elevating the same way and get that blend and then place it into the foil. And then the last one in this section would be underneath. So remember, we put the first one in to kind of divide the middle. So I've got 2 in. What I would do is just clip that up and out of the way, and then go in and do one smaller one right below that through there. So then you've had 3 diagonals that come across that section. Same thing like I mentioned in the front. If you wanted additional lightness, you could tip out this remaining here on the bottom. I would just break it up into some smaller pieces. And remember what I mentioned about pushing back. So the lower you push, the more hair gets out of the way, and you can just go through and lighten up those bottoms if you want a little bit more dimension in there. The last section that I want to talk to you guys about is this middle, the back section. And this is an area where there's so much hair, and also what can happen is, depending on how layered their haircut is, I'm sure you guys have done highlights before, and if the top layer, let's say, only falls to like here, and you've got all this hair underneath, what it can look like sometimes is like a steppiness in it. So to try and help with layered hair, what I will actually do in this area is go through vertically. And vertical is not a line that people use a lot, but when you think about it, exactly where you place it is exactly what you're going to see, which is the same idea as balayaging. If you were to paint your points of light there, it's exactly what you're going to see. So vertical lines can actually work through to cover this area and extend any of the layeriness that we have. So what I'll do is just start in the center back, or you can start right at this section on the ear. Actually, maybe I'll come over there, it'll be easier to see. Okay, so when you're doing vertical in the back, it's easier to have your guest kind of tip her head a bit more forward to make it less, the foil want to pull less down on you. So what I'll do is I'll start here. And in this area, because it's going to be falling down this way, it doesn't really matter what your stitch is inside, it's always going to live like that. So what I'll actually do is, instead of stitching, just take a slice in this area and think about where you want the color to be connected closest. So in this case, I probably want it to be connected closer to the top and less down here. So what I'll do is paint that on like I'm doing a balayage, where it starts higher up and then drops down. Here's something I didn't mention on this yet, is that when you're balayaging in this area, sometimes you can get a little spot, which might look like it's going to give you like a bleed or something. A really great tip that I have is, think about your color brush like a pencil. So you write with this end, you erase with the other end. So what you can do is go back in with a clean tip and go the opposite way of where you see any of those like beads of color. And what that will do is just take away any of those suspect areas up for you.
I love the way that you explain that.
It's like a pencil, you erase with one, write with the other. So now I can go and place it in the foil like usual. And then again, remember, because there's no color here, you don't want to fold that up all the way. So you want to fold below and then the rest of the way up. Through this back section, I would probably fit in about, so one in the center and 2 in the middle. So probably 4 on each side to get through this whole section. And so it's a really easy way. I would skip about that much hair in between, so about 1 inch before I go to the next one. Now, I know a lot of people wonder, well, what's going to happen with this hair in between? So what you could do is the same thing that I've been mentioning, where you go through and just lighten out those ends. But if you're dealing with a client that already has existing highlights in their hair, you may want to go in between the foils and actually put on a Shades EQ root shadow to drop down and blend out any demarcation lines that they have from previous highlights. So it's an easy way that you can actually go through and do that with this technique to be able to get a low light in between of these new fresh highlights.
I'm loving how there's all this interior depth that's more easily created, it looks like, Sean, than, you know, trying to weave and trying to get the right amount in between. And it's really well thought out how you're doing this. It's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, again, it just goes back to what I was saying. It's like if you think about the principles, everything will always work for you, and then you don't have to worry so much about all these different weavings and where you're placing the foils. So this is going to give us those bold balayage-looking panels the exact same way, but without having to worry about getting any lines in it, which is really cool.
Okay.
So I would just continue through. What's that, sorry?
Carmen would like to know if there is a difference in the type of brush that you use. They just bought a name brand brush that was quite pricey, and they're just interested in how you determine the brush.
Honestly, a big thing for me with brush is size, to be honest with you. So if you notice, I was working with like a smaller, narrower brush. The reason why I like to do this is because when I'm doing a balayage type effect, it allows me to get closer to the scalp without getting like an excess amount of brush in the way. So I do like to work with this. Now, what I would do is if my client had longer hair, I would switch after I do that elevation with the lower brush. I would actually switch to the normal size color brush to be able to really go through and saturate the bottoms faster and more efficiently. So that's really the biggest thing when it comes to brush. Another huge thing for me is like the crispness of the bristle. So a lot of people will try and do these like hand painted looks with bristles that are like all crazy and have been like in the sink for a week. And the reality is that when you're trying to draw, think about drawing with, again, back to the drawing reference, but if you were drawing with a big fat crayon versus a colored pencil, you get a different line with it. So the same thing applies with your color brush. So for me, that's the biggest thing, size and the crispness of the bristle, something nice and clean.
Nice.
I love a red Kim brush, so I'm not going to lie. 15 years and counting. So,
you're catching up to me.
What's that?
You're catching up to me.
I know, I am slowly. So I would finish that through the back, and then it leaves us with the top. So I know I don't want to take up too much time here, but I have another visual for you guys to show you how this look can look with even more contrast. So let me show you that. So this is the same technique that, oh, sorry, that's the same one I showed you already. Here she is. This is the same technique that I was just sharing with you, but with more contrast. And what makes this have more contrast is because I went through in between with Shades EQ. So using Shades EQ now to go in and be able to add a low light in between where my highlights were. In this color, I worked with 05WN. And when I did the low light, you just don't bring it all the way down to the end. So you can just stop at kind of the halfway point, and you'll see how that now is going to give you more depth than her sister here, which has a little bit more.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. That's great.
So same technique, just showing now the difference of adding Shades EQ in between your foils, how much more depth and dimension that can give you versus just working with the existing natural color that's in between the hair.
Excellent. For anybody that's watching that isn't familiar, Shades EQ is a demi-permanent. So you'd be looking in whatever color range you're using to, specifically, it's an acidic demi-permanent. So making sure that you're using something that's acidic that helps to close down the cuticle between, especially if you keep decolorizing with a bleach and freezing that cuticle. What an acidic demi will do is it will help to close the cuticle and make it shiny and healthy. So again, looking at the brand that you're using for an acidic demi-permanent, level 5 natural warm.
That's right. So
Sean, I have one quick question.
Yeah.
So the one that you didn't put the demi in between, did you melt that? Did you like put something at the base after?
No, I didn't after. So let me show you that up close again, because this was no root shadow, no nothing was done on that. So that was fully just with that elevating technique. So you can see even, let me make sure I get it, around the hairline even. It's really blended, but I did not put any no root shadow has been put on that. So if you do that elevation, that is what will help you. You won't have to focus so much on that.
Thank you.
Right. So everyone at home, now is the time to start practicing this, even on an old mannequin, not your dog, but on a mannequin or a friend that's in the house with you, sister, brother, cousin, I don't know. Maybe even finding alternate ways, whether you've got yarn or string or shoelaces that you can always repurchase, and trying to just get the feel of raising the elevating, the hair. I think that we do create a lot of work for ourselves when we go in. We do all this highlighting, and then we go back in and create a root shadow. It's been a great book, but with this technique, you can get the same look, smarter, not harder.
Yeah, so it's really straightforward from here on. I just want to show you guys what I would do for the top. Again, remember, you can use, if you have your favorite pattern, you can use it on the top. I just want to show you a quick way to get through the kind of the bottom in the express way. So through the top, what I would actually do is go up horizontally. So from that top horseshoe section, I would work horizontally up towards the part. Reason being, again, exactly what you placed, like balayage, where you paint that color is exactly where you're going to see it when it falls. So it'll give you that textured dimensional look without having to rely on it after. So you go up this way. I'd like to do the weave where it's a smaller weave to a bolder weave in the front to get that impact around the face. Then in the back area, what you're going to do in the small little section that would be left out is now switch and work up this way. So you're going to end on that parting with your last foil. And again, because that's the way the hair is going to fall, exactly what you weave is exactly what you're going to see in that. So there's no guesswork about where the color is going to live.
Love.
So that's kind of the technique in a nutshell. What do you guys think? Easy?
Love it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So good.
Any other who loves watching your magic hands?
My magic hands, thank you.
Yeah, lots of great, I know, and your gloves, thank you, Sean. I am a little jealous. George Garcia sent me a picture of himself with silver gloves, which I was,
what?
How do we not have those?
I know, I didn't even know there was silver gloves.
I know, me either, until he showed me now. Excellent. Now, Sean, is there any other sort of hot tip trick for the post-lockdown back to business that you'd like to share with the group?
I mean, I think the biggest thing, and I've seen a few people doing this already, which is awesome, but it would be like getting in touch with the clients. And I think like building that rapport already, the conversation, it's so much easier to start it now than it is in the salon. And I also think it gives them peace of mind right now to feel easy about it too. Because I had this thought the other day, which it's crazy that I didn't really think about it before, but we're so used to, as being hairstylists, getting our hair done, or worst case, we could do it ourselves. Like, you know, you did your self-cut, I did my self-color, like, but I thought about it, I'm like, wait, the average person that's sitting there sometimes is so wrapped up in their hair, even more than we are as hairdressers. And this feeling that they're having right now is probably like anxiety-strickenly crazy. And we, as the hairdressers, don't have that feeling as much because, like I said, we have a way to deal with it. So when that thought hit, I was like, damn, I would really want to be reached out to and almost like talked off the ledge, if you will, by my stylist. Yeah. Like, don't try to do this yourself, or wait, and we're all in this together. Like, you know, just encouraging words. So I think reaching out to them and starting the dialogue now is the best thing you can do to not only retain your clients, but also prevent them from doing anything crazy.
Yeah. Fair enough. I think also, Sean, what I posted something the other day, like, why should I do a FaceTime or what have you?
Yeah.
And so one is, to your point, helping them through this anxiety-ridden time. The second, though, is so that you can understand what it is that they want. Our clients are going to want to have their hair done. They're also going to be a little bit nervous about the situation that they've just found themselves in for weeks on end. So how great would it be to know what formula you're going to use and to have it ready so that, you know, not pre-mixed yet, but ready so that you can mix it as soon as they come in, and make sure that at least you're taking away that precious time, you know, you're having that precious moment of consultation prior to them getting there, so that you can limit the amount of time that they're in the salon, because they're going to have these concerns, and we want to make sure that they feel safe and comfortable. And so There's another reason. There's knowing, giving them a reality check so they don't show up on their first appointment back in and they're like, no, I want to go platinum. And you're like,
right.
So you've got about 2 inches that'll be platinum and the rest is going to be like orange. So let's talk about that. But you can have those conversations ahead of time. So there's so many reasons to be doing it. I did get asked a subsequent question, which is if my clients don't have FaceTime because they don't have an iPhone, what can I use? And I think that I posted it. If not, I will. But you've got WhatsApp video. If they have Instagram, you can call them Instagram video. You've got Skype. You've got Zoom. There's a million ways to go live with your client. And I would, like me, have them on all of my computers. And I've got every single one of those. Well, I don't have Zoom for anyone that's watching from corporate. I don't have Zoom type on my
me neither.
But I do have it on my personal computer. And, just finding ways to connect with people. So beautiful work, Sean, as usual. Amazing hot tips. Everybody's super excited and very, very grateful for what you shared. So thank you for being with us today.
Thank you guys.
And love you.
Thank you so much, Sean.
See you soon.
Miss you. Oh, wait, I got one more thing before we cut Sean off, because actually you made me think of this, because people are concerned about people doing their own hair. And I've sort of said, listen, they were my client and I called them and they were having a holy meltdown for reasons I don't understand. Okay. Like I'm not in their shoes and I don't want to pretend to be, but if they were, I would definitely want to walk them through feeling safe at home. So I have a question for you. Sean, you live in New York City, yes or no?
Yes.
What percentage prior to this of the time did you go out and eat at restaurants?
Oh my God. I didn't ever eat at home. Well, I never cooked food at home. So it was either takeout or going out to a restaurant. All the time.
Okay. And now you've been Mr. Chef Boyardee. I see your grill that you've got,
totally.
Your and all of those things. But realistically, are you now deciding that I'm only going to ever eat at home?
No, not at all. I actually recently looked to go and order, and most of my favorite places are no longer delivering or open right now. So it's not that I'm forever going to be the home chef. I'm going to still be going back to life as per normal, and supporting those businesses. Excellent.
So I think that that's the point, right? Yeah. Like just because you've decided to invest a small fortune in new kitchen gear does not necessarily mean that you are going to cook at home, even though you've had to cook at home all this time.
No, it might be a weekly thing now, maybe, exactly. Like a moment.
So just help your clients out, everybody. Make sure you help them out. Just because they do their hair, they trim their fringe once at home. I did my haircut at home. I don't plan on doing it all the time, and I'm a hairdresser. So with that, thank you for sharing everything, Sean. And until next time.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
You too, Sean. Thank you.
Bye.